No, we're going live. Okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
so you got to stay up in here, okay? No wandering in the back.
All right. I won't walk too far. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you all tonight. My name is Nicholas Contos. I'm the chairman of the Republican Party here in Bonneville County. I'm a volunteer. All the members of the party organization in town, we're volunteers here. I don't hold any government office. The Republican Party is a volunteer organization. Funny story, I guess. You mentioned not getting a phone call back. I heard a story the other day that they said the Democrats are working to get more voters in Idaho. And they went to a little small town way up in northern Idaho. And one of the candidates was up there and talking to people. And he said, and the guy in town said, you know, we really have two problems up here. He said, first problem is we don't have a doctor in our town. And this Democrat candidate got on the phone and he made a phone call and talked and said, oh, I've got that fixed. We'll have someone here tomorrow. You'll have a doctor in town tomorrow. What's the second problem? He said, we have no cell service in this town. Sorry, I'm joking. Yeah, you know how politicians are. I've been a conservative and a Republican my whole life. I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh with my grandfather, and you know, whenever we talk about politics, I like to start off with a question, and the question is, what is a political party? Maybe to talk about that briefly, I'd give an example. If I have potholes on the street in front of my house, and it's a big problem, I need to get that fixed. In America, I have the right to petition my government and to try and get that fixed, right? I can try to get the potholes fixed in front of on my street. And maybe if you and you kind of have the same potholes, maybe we get together, we work together, and we say, you know, we need to get the potholes fixed in this town. Maybe we form the pothole club. And our pothole club, we petition our government to get the potholes fixed. Maybe then we get together and decide, you know, if we're going to get these potholes fixed, we need to get somebody elected to office that will really get the job done. So we gather together and we say, you know, we're gonna search out the best candidate for office that will get these potholes fixed. And so maybe we nominate Jim Bob. Jim Bob's our guy. He'll fix the potholes. We give him some funding. We help his campaign. We get him elected. At that point, we're about essentially a political party. But we get Jim Bob elected. Will he fix all the potholes? Probably not. He might fix some. He's a good guy. He probably fixes some. Maybe not enough. We never get perfection. So we start thinking, well, should we keep supporting Jim Bob? Should we support someone else? Well, what's Jim Bob going to do at that point? He's probably going to get his brother-in-law and his sister and his cousin to join the pothole club to make sure he gets nominated next time we go around. Then what happens to the pothole club? It's an interesting dynamic suddenly. Suddenly the pothole club, does it exist to nominate Jim Bob and help him get elected? Or does it exist to fix potholes? Now, to be clear, I think Jim Bob's probably a good guy. He wants to fix potholes. He's trying to do what's right. But you can see that dynamic inside our pothole club that we formed. That dynamic I see inside political parties today. The Republican Party exists to advance a set of goals. It has a written platform. And that brings us to the convention we saw last week. Last week, in the state of Idaho, the Republican Party had a convention in Twin Falls. And every county in the state sent delegates to this state convention. If you've never been to a state convention, you should put it on your bucket list. It is a great experience. We spent 3 days down there, and there's workshops, there's seminars, there's trainings, there's debates, there's discussions, there's things that happen, a lot of things that happen. And it is a great experience. In my opinion, the most important thing we did there in Twin Falls was we set a platform. We wrote down again, what we're trying to accomplish. You can look up the Republican platform online. It's full of lots of good things. You can tell it's written by a lot of different people because every year there's new amendments and adjustments to it. That platform is the first and most important committee that we have. We had a number of people. Well, I think we had quite a few people from our county that were on the platform committee that helped work out the amendments and sort through the different proposals. And then that platform came before 715 delegates. We filled up a huge auditorium. And among those 715 delegates, we used parliamentary procedure, and we worked through amendments and objections and suggestions and so on and so forth until we adopted a platform. That platform, to me, is the most important part of a political party. It's why that organization exists. The other things we do at a convention, we organize the party itself. Any organization as big as the Republican Party needs to have rules and bylaws and those sort of things. And as you can imagine, those become controversial. They take a lot of discussion and debate and teamwork and working together. We also passed resolutions there, which are non-binding. Again, the Republican Party is not a government organization, so they don't make laws. But we passed resolutions, which are statements of intent and instructions to maybe Republican candidates for office that these are the things we'd like to see accomplished in the next 2 years. They also reviewed credentials of all the delegates that are there. This occurs over the course of 3 days. And again, like I say, if you've never been to a convention, you should put it on your list. I think we have a few here who were there, and they can testify to that. This one was an especially interesting convention because there's been some controversy inside the Republican Party, specifically towards our Bonneville County organization. And so we took 41 delegates plus 6 more, so 47 delegates there, and we were ready. Our delegation, I could not be more proud of them. We had our 47 people down there. We were united. We were professional, but we were campaigning hard for the goals that we had laid out and for the direction that we wanted the party to go. And it was incredibly successful too. And that was very rewarding. We all follow politics here, and I'm sure you guys share my frustration when something bad happens in the world of politics. Seems like it never gets resolved. They get away with it. It stretches on for years and years. In this case, we had 715 delegates from across the state of Idaho. They gathered together, and they changed direction of the Republican Party. You'll probably see negative news articles because the liberal press doesn't like it much. But there were big things happened at this convention. The last thing we did, well, I guess let me go back just a little bit. One of the things I love about the Republican Party is that it truly is a grassroots organization. When you all voted last May, on your ballot, you had an opportunity to vote for someone in your neighborhood. That person is called a precinct officer. But each one of you, depending on which party you're affiliated with, have an opportunity to vote for someone who is a precinct officer for your party, for your neighborhood. He or she is a designated Republican or Democrat for that neighborhood. Those precinct officers make up the party organization. And the first thing they do when they get together after the primary, they get together and they reorganize the party. That for us happened on May 26th. And I got stuck with the unfortunate position of being the chairman this year. But each 2 years, that starts all over again. So each 2 years, you have an opportunity to pick a representative for your chosen political party that will help shape that party. So they first elect leadership in the county. The county representatives get together, elect leadership in the region. And then we elect delegates that we send to the state convention. Then at the state convention, every 2 years, we elect new leadership there as well. So in this case, the Republican Party cleaned house. We had, I believe, 6 leaders or elected leaders on the state level. And the delegates that came from the counties all across Idaho elected all new slate, top to bottom. And, you know, I wish we could do that with Congress sometimes. And truthfully, we can. But we have to be awake and active and united to do it. In Idaho, I can tell you that the Republican Party is strong. The energy that we had in that auditorium with 715 delegates as we voted motions up or down and debated on the floor was amazing. It was incredible to see so many patriots that cared deeply about liberty working together. And we don't all agree on everything. I mean, there's factions and divisions and arguments there. But the passion and the energy there from those good people was amazing. And truly, Idaho is an amazing state, I think. And Bonneville is an amazing county in an amazing state. I couldn't be more proud of the delegates that we sent to the convention. Like I said, there was some really controversial stuff going on. And our delegates were professional, but were assertive, and were able to talk to other delegates from all across the state, tell them the situations that were going on, talk about the principles that we believed in. And in the end, I believe prevailed. I think the Republican Party has good hands going forward. In fact, we have now on the state Republican Executive Committee, we have 3 members from Eastern Idaho. Dorothy Moon was elected the new chairman. Daniel Silver was elected the first vice chairman. Our own Mark Fuller from Bonneville County is the second vice chairman. Mr. Steve Bender is the treasurer, and Maria Nate was the secretary. So Eastern Idaho has gained some influence inside the Republican Party. So coming up, we have our county organization here. We have goals coming up. We, in fact, tomorrow night are going to be nominated a new prosecutor. The county prosecutor has resigned again, so we'll be making a nomination again for the state or for the county commissioners to appoint. We have we're starting a couple of new initiatives that we're going to be recruiting people for political office. Often, when we think about politics, we just think about the governor, the president, maybe our legislators. But in Bonneville County, we have several hundred offices that have to be filled. And we're starting a new initiative to lay out those offices, to educate ourselves as well as the whole community about when those election dates come up and what the responsibilities are for those. There's everything from mosquito abatement districts to school boards to city council positions to road and bridge districts to legislators. We had 47 different candidates on the ballot just last primary in May, and that doesn't even begin to cover all the other offices and different things that are going to be coming open in the next year. So we're starting a new initiative to be able to explain these different offices and to keep tabs on them, and to be able to build a pool of people who are willing and capable and good people to fill each one of these seats. You know, we all flip on Fox News and we see President Biden did this or that today. And sometimes we forget that the guy who runs the road and bridge department, he's the one that fixes our pothole. He might have more effect on our life than the president or the Speaker of the House on any given day. Certainly our sheriffs, our mayors, and our local officials do have a huge impact on our lives. So we're going to be doing a new initiative on that. We're going to be doing some parliamentary procedure training. I can tell you that when there's 715 people together trying to make a decision all together, it's difficult. And the parliamentary procedure is important. Those who understand how to make a motion, how to second a motion, how to amend the motion, how to table the motion, and amend the amendment we found out in this last convention, and amend the amendment to the amendment sometimes. The understanding how to do that properly in a big group is important, and it allows us to be able to make a difference and to be able to be heard. I mentioned earlier that we're going to be educating people about local offices and building a pool of people to fill those offices. We have an election coming up in November. There are a few contested races, and we'll be working to make sure that our party is successful in those races. We'll be starting to plan another Lincoln Day event. The party here in Bonneville County has a reputation for putting on some pretty big Lincoln Day events. We've brought in some speakers, Judge Jeannie, and Dinesh D'Souza, James O'Keefe. We've had quite a few big speakers, and we're planning to continue that. That takes a lot of planning. It takes about 6 months of planning and a lot of work. You can ask Bev here how much work it takes. She helped a lot with the last one. The other thing that that a party does, and this may seem trivial, I suppose, but one of the things that a party does is to organize itself. And I think that's important. An organization, in many ways, is only as good as its own organizational structure. And if it doesn't have a good structure in place and doesn't have rules and bylaws of its own that make sense, then the organization cannot function and cannot be a force for good. And I believe a political party is an important thing. I'm like everyone else. I get frustrated with political parties. You know, it's politics. We don't like it. And there's a lot of self-serving people in politics and in political parties. Sometimes I feel like I gotta take a shower after I go to a political meeting, you know? But I believe they are important. On our own, we can only have so much influence. If there's a pothole on my street and I holler and scream about it all by myself, it may never get fixed. It isn't going to get fixed unless I work together with other people that also want to fix that pothole. We have to work together. We have to unite. We have to organize. And so it's important that we have these organizations that can work together, that can petition our government. A political party is based on some principles. You know, the first is freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech in this country. It's protected. We have a right to petition our government. We have a right of assembly, a right of association. When we use these rights properly, when we exercise the rights that we have, we're able to make a difference, and we're able to shape our society, our community, our nation for better. And that's why I believe a political party is important. It's something that that we need. If I decide to be elected or to run for office and I just raise my hand on my own, it isn't going to happen. No matter how good a person is, if they're standing all alone, they're not likely to be elected unless they have a support group behind them to help push them forward and get them elected so that they can accomplish the things that that organization is seeking to get accomplished. Again, the state convention was a great, great opportunity. If you ever get a chance to go, you should go. And I couldn't be more proud of our delegates from Bonneville County. I guess I can open up to a few questions, Doug said. The lawsuit. I think that's going to go away. For those who don't know, there was a disagreement within the party about some of the internal rules. And unfortunately, some of the leaders on the state level took it upon themselves to unilaterally just sue the volunteers in Bonneville County, which was a really bad move. It hurt individuals, their reputations, and volunteers don't deserve to be treated that way, in my opinion. Not when it could have been resolved with a phone call or with internal disagreements. A private organization like a political party should resolve its own disputes and not resort to a lawsuit. And I think that was one of the things that helped shape the direction of the convention. One of the last things that the body of delegates, all 715, did was vote to instruct the leadership to dismiss a lawsuit. Said we don't do things that way.
So what do you do when, I mean, I'm new at this, so I don't know how the questioning goes, but you were talking about having how, you know, if you want to run for office and you kind of run without, you know, a party behind you, it's not going to work. What do you do when candidates try to use the party to exploit or to gain power? They exploit the party system to gain power. Does that make sense? Because I see that happening. You mentioned the prosecutor meeting that's happening tomorrow. I'd like to know where that is. We don't have to talk about it now, but yeah, what do you do when the candidates are using the party to exploit or exploiting the party to get power? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree that a lot of people join or participate in political parties because they see that as a stepping stone to getting themselves into office. And that is one of the challenges that all political parties face. We talked about the my pothole repair club earlier. If it fills up with friends of Jim Bob, its motives start being questioned a little bit, right? So what happens to that club? I guess I didn't finish the example here. What happens to that club if the good people decide, you know what, this club isn't working anymore, we're going to walk away? It's no longer a pothole repair club. It's now a Get Jim Elected club. So how do you fix that? You need people to stay involved. And we saw that this last week when we had 715 delegates that represented the grassroots of the party from all across the state. There's not that many politicians in the state. And so those delegates, those grassroots, good people being involved in organizations are able to keep the organization going in the direction that it should be going, I think. It's a constant challenge. The purpose of a political party is to elect people who will advance the goals of that political party. But sometimes we have to change candidates. Sometimes we have to work to get better candidates. But that's what we should be doing as a political party. Here.
So Dorothy Moon was on Neil and Julie's show the other morning, and they asked her that same question. And she says that it's no longer Luna. It is the Republican Party that has instigated the lawsuit. So it's not Luna's anymore. It's the Republican Party. And she says that she does not know until she sits down with the attorneys and find out exactly how it goes, where the funding is coming from, and that. So she was really pretty good on answering the question, but she says it is actually the Republican Party now and her responsibility to see where it actually lands, if they can cancel it or that way.
Yeah, I'm not a legal expert and won't pretend to be, but I was named in that lawsuit personally. And the lawsuit said Tom Luna and the state Republican Party. So I don't know exactly how that works. My understanding was that Tom Luna would drop off that because he's no longer the chairman of the state party. And we're optimistic that it'll be resolved soon.
Did the party decide if the last presidential election was fair or not?
No, there was that was in the news, I think you saw. There was a resolution proposed to declare the prior election invalid. That resolution didn't really go anywhere. I know that there is a lot of concern within the Republican Party about election integrity, but the party didn't take an official stance on anything there. The news, they like to pick points like that, but that it wasn't didn't become an official resolution. You bet.
I think that you have a good point about a party giving credibility when you have groups of people rather than one person making a point about a complaint with a governing official. Because I've had situations where I'm trying to make the best argument I can to a particular school board member, and I think I have the better argument, but then he makes a comment, well, you're the only one complaining about this. Well, why don't you address the cogency of my argument? But in the real world, your point's well made about having a group. And if you have activist people, if you find out, or even one person finds out, that the motive for the group pushing for pothole mitigation or fixing is motivated by the guy's brother getting the beyond fair market value of the contract to fix them, that will be known on a wider basis if you have the involved citizens in the party that helps that.
Absolutely. I've been in that position before. I've gone and spoken with legislators about subject matter that I'm an expert, that I'm employed in, and had that exact comment. Well, why is no one else complaining about this? I said, well, no one else knows about it.
This is something that I have been thinking a lot about, and I'm all new to this, so I don't know how it works. But going back to like voter integrity and election integrity, I'll give an example. Like in Utah, they don't have primaries. they elect the people in their Republican caucus and put them on the ballot. Is that something that we could consider doing to stop the crossover?
It is. It's something that, people in the party have talked about that. I don't know that there's a movement for that on the table at the moment, but there's been discussion about that. I believe that an organization has a right to choose which nominee they want to support. And this is a kind of a controversial topic, I suppose, but if I form a pothole club, then those in my pothole club, we have a right to choose which candidate we want to support. And if there's an anti-pothole club over here, I don't know if that makes sense, but they don't necessarily have a right to vote in our group to decide which candidate we're going to support. In fact, we made this was discussed at the convention, and I ended up being able to make a comment that I said, in the United States of America, let's be clear, we all have a right to vote. We can vote in November. We each have a right to vote for the candidate of our choosing, and anyone can run for office in November. If you meet the qualifications of that office, you can run. But a nomination is not the same thing as an election. A nomination is when a private group gets together and chooses which candidate they want to support for the upcoming election. It's an entirely different thing. And sometimes we get those confused because it's the same process, the voting. But no one is elected to office in May. No one. They're elected to office in November.
I want to reiterate the situation here about the pothole club, because 2 years ago I went around my neighborhood and got everybody on my block, both sides of the street, to sign a petition to lower the speed limit from 50 miles an hour to 35 because people are going by at 70 miles an hour. There's been 8 fatalities since I moved here. Wow. In my general area. And of course they put in the flashing lights, and that's helped some, but not all. So I showed up finally, because for a while they wouldn't have any personal meetings, but now they're open at the county commissioners. I showed up, and the guy for the roads was there because I spoke with him on the phone. He says, well, that's what the county rules are. I said, but we have all the people saying we want this changed. And so I went there and I talked to them about that, and I talked about the agriculture area not being taken over by the all the big buildings going on. And they said I was the first person to come in and speak about saving the agriculture area. So really, every one of us, one of our votes, every time we show up, it is so incredibly important, because they don't know what we need and what we want.
I agree, especially on local issues. I'm amazed how often we have local issues right in our own community, our own backyards, and those who we've elected to be in office don't hear from anyone. And so they just go about their business not knowing what the community might think or not knowing the ideas that are out there. My opinion, we spend far too much time watching Fox News, learning what Joe Biden ate for breakfast, and not enough time looking at what our mosquito abatement district is doing.
Nick, the pothole club, as you will, apparently took over the Republican Party in the state. The more anti-group, do you think they're going to be organizing and prepared in 2 years to make a strong comeback against you, the Eastern Idaho group, if you will?
Well, I'm optimistic about the unity within the Republican Party. As I said before, I believe that those who volunteer for the party, they all believe in the principles of our platform. The Republican platform is a good document. It's spelled out. We believe in lower taxes. We believe in less regulation. We believe in support for traditional family values, these things. We have so many things we agree on. And with any group of organization, there's different factions and divisions and overlapping groups and so on and so forth. But I'm optimistic that there can be some good unity within the party for a number of reasons. One, the vote totals were overwhelming this year. In years prior, we've had votes that were very close and contested. This year, the vote was totally secured, done in a great manner, and it was overwhelming. And two, I think we're able to put some things behind us as an organization. We mentioned the lawsuit and a few things that happened earlier. I'm optimistic that those are going to be put to bed, and that we're going to be able to move forward and work towards our common goals. That's what an organization should be doing. should be focusing on its goals. And those goals are in the platform, the things that we want to accomplish. And there's always going to be some vying and power struggles for who gets nominated or who gets into party offices. But if we can keep those principles that we're trying to accomplish in mind, I'm optimistic. I really am.
I have a couple questions. I'll get progressively more difficult.
Oh, good.
One is, where do we find information about what you're professing? Number one, the Republican organization. We're fairly new to the political arena, and we want to get engaged. And whether you're young, middle, or a little elder, where do we find the information? Do we have to go and search for Republican Party on the website? How do you?
Yes, the websites are the first place I would direct you. There's a state website, idahogop.com, and that's where you can find the platform. Our platform is statewide, adopted there. We also have a great new website for Bonneville County. The front page of our website will say when we have monthly meetings that are open to the public. You're welcome to attend and participate there. That's the best place. And on our website, you can also sign up to get on the email list and get updates about what our upcoming meetings, upcoming events, the things we're trying to accomplish.
I want
So
to
that's an easy one, right?
All right, we'll move on. So you said 715 delegates, and then you kind of blended in that they could be of different parties. So I'm a little bit confused. Were the people No,
that at the
sure, but that's great. But again, naivety is a good way to learn. So there's Democratic at the same.
No.
Okay.
No.
Republican only.
No, this that we had last week was the Republican State Convention. So it was a Republican Party organization, all volunteer. It was held in Twin Falls. And according to the rules and procedures of the organization, each county is allocated a certain number of delegates to send to this convention. So Bonneville County being one of the bigger counties in the state, we were allowed to send our 47. Ada County, which is far and away the biggest, had 140. Kootenai had 68. A lot of the smaller counties, like Caribou County, I think had 4 or 5. Madison County had 12 or so. But each county has a Republican organization, and that is the foundation of the Republican Party. So each county is allowed to send a certain number of delegates. So at Twin Falls, we had 715 total. Each of those delegates were picked by their own counties to represent their counties and to be able to help make decisions about the party organization on a state level.
And then the other and last question, I'll move on for others, is that it sounds like, this is why I asked the second question, you're making decisions for all of us regardless of party. For example, you're talking about this pothole club, right? So you're making decisions as a Republican across party lines, if you will. So am I incorrect? What are you talking about trying to change in your?
Well, I would say not necessarily, no. At our state convention, there were no laws made. There is only a party organization made. So similar to, say, a church or any other voluntary organization, that organization has a right to determine its own opinions, its own stances on issues, has a right to determine what leaders will be in that organization. As a voluntary organization, though, it does not have a right to impose those decisions upon you. It can lobby our elected officials to bring about those things, just like any other voluntary organization can.
Nick, I was just wondering if you could explain the resolution that I think was passed, and we did some things that kind of fast at the end there, about people who, to help the people in this audience who are worried about the crossover voting. Did not we pass a resolution requiring someone to register as a Republican at least 24 months before a vote or something? Can you clarify that for those who?
Yeah, it was a proposed rule for study in the future. It's not in effect now, but the Republican Party has a serious concern about what we call crossover voting. You saw it in the news in prior months. The news media in Idaho was actively encouraging independents and members of other political parties to switch their affiliation so that they could help choose the nominee for the Republican Party, which in my mind is dishonest. It's not right to sabotage an organization or to sway an organization that you don't rightly participate in or belong to. So that's a serious concern for the Republican Party. They're looking at a number of different things. One of the things that was passed for consideration in the future was to change a rule that would require that if you switch back and forth between political parties, that there's a cooling off period between. So you can't say, today I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote in this primary. Tomorrow I'm a Republican, I'm going to vote in this primary. Next day I'm a Libertarian. And so that would be a 25-month cooling off period, which would be one election cycle essentially. Now, the reason why that can be is because, again, a political party is an organization that's voluntary, and so it has the inherent right to decide how it will choose its own nominees. As mentioned earlier, a political party can decide that they're going to use a caucus system. They could decide to nominate them internally with just party leadership. The wise decision, which the Republican Party has done for years and years, is to put it out to the voters who are affiliated with the organization. That allows the party to have the most common buy-in and to get the most popular candidate with the best chance of winning in the upcoming election. But that decision of how to choose the nominee is a decision that rightfully belongs to the organization. In other states, there's other ways they do it. In Idaho, it's changed back and forth through the years. We've had caucus systems, we've had open primaries, we've had closed primaries. So
the political committee member or the
precinct officer.
Okay, sorry, got
Yeah.
Anyhow, are they required to go to the state convention
No.
as the election?
No, a precinct officer is the basic foundation of the political party, and he's the guy in your neighborhood. Your precinct really is just your neighborhood. His or her responsibility, is to be in this case, the Republican in the neighborhood. So he'll attend a monthly meeting if possible. If not, they can get a substitute to attend the meeting. They are the person in the neighborhood that if people want to know who's coming up in the next election, or how should I vote on this if I want to see movement in this direction, they go to that person. He's supposed to be informed about the candidates, about the issues. He's also supposed to help elect leadership up the chain.
So I mean, that's because I know that our committee member never went and hasn't gone for the previous years he's been elected. He doesn't go to his monthly meeting or bi-monthly meeting. He doesn't get substitutes to go. Huh?
Well,
he's in Madison County.
Yeah.
So I just think
afterwards.
that if they're supposed to be representing us, shouldn't there be some sort of, you need to be there if your hat on.
Well, generally, and I won't speak for Madison County, but generally, if your precinct officer, your neighborhood precinct officer, is not attending meetings, you can walk in and volunteer to be his assistant precinct officer generally. And if he's not in attendance at a meeting, you would be able to vote in his stead. In fact, in Bonneville County, we encourage each of our precinct officers to have at least one, but as many as they'd like. They could have 3, 4, 5, 10 assistant precinct officers that are able to vote in their stead if they're not there in a particular meeting, are also able to help organize communication throughout their neighborhood and be involved. Madison County needs more volunteers, I can tell you that.
Nick, I'd like to go back to your discussion about the being registered as a Republican for 2 years prior. How is that going to be possible? When I went to the primary this year, I could have selected any party's ballot because they asked me which ballot did I want. I did not have to show that I was a registered Republican or a Democrat or whatever. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to enforce that?
To tell the truth, I think there's some details to work out there. The proposal, though, that they're discussing, and this will be discussed and honed in 6 months likely, is that anybody who is unaffiliated can affiliate with a political party. So if you're 18 and this is your first time to vote, there's no period or concern there. If you just moved here from another state, there's no concern there. Or if you've been unaffiliated for a while, there's no concern there. But if you registered as a Democrat in the last primary, and then decided to switch back over and register as a Republican in this primary, there's a little bit of a period there, 25 months. I think it would fall to the county election office. You know, they maintain rolls of who's registered to which political party, and so they would maintain that roll, I believe, and be able to keep track of it that way. Yeah, if you were unaffiliated, they wouldn't have batted
If you're
an eye.
unaffiliated, then you could pick a party. But if you're a Democrat, you got Democrat. If you got Republican, you got Republican.
That's what I'm saying is, if it's not being done that way at the precinct level.
That's my understanding as well.
They didn't say, here's the Republican ballot. Okay.
My question is back to the prior question before about precinct officers, they're called.
Yes.
From our
Yeah,
neighborhood.
precinct officers.
If they're unengaged, inactive, not doing anything, can we throw our own hat in the ring and vote on, put our own name on the ballot against them in the next?
Absolutely.
And how
Absolutely.
Often, how often are those elections?
Every 2 years.
Every two.
Yeah, absolutely. And even
you.
if they are engaged, you can and should.
Thank you.
We try to, if possible, have at least one or two choices in every neighborhood. And so if you're interested in becoming involved in being that precinct officer, I'd first encourage you to attend some meetings. But absolutely, we want as many people as we can to volunteer for that position in the May primary, which will be admittedly, 18 months from now, almost 2 years from now. But yeah, if you'd like to be the precinct officer for your neighborhood, all you have to do is stop in at the election office and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer for the job.
You mentioned that there was a meeting tomorrow. Where will that be, and who is able to attend?
It's right here. It's open to the public.
Okay.
Now, in our official central committee meetings, when it comes to making motions or resolutions or things, that is limited to the elected precinct officers. But it's open to the public, anyone who wants to attend, and they're very informational, good informational meetings. Yeah, that's a good point. Tomorrow is off of our schedule a little bit because of the need for an appointment of a county prosecutor. We scheduled an off-schedule meeting so we can make that recommendation to the county commissioners. Likely. Well, I don't know who will be nominated there. The primary has already been done, and so the guy who will be on the ballot in November has already determined. So it's kind of a little bit likely scenario there.
Nick,
Yes.
could you also explain that if a precinct does not have a precinct officer and there is no election coming right now, people can come to the central committee and ask for the vote to be voted in at a central committee meeting?
Absolutely.
That's easier than running for election.
We don't have very many vacancies right now in the Republican Party, but if there's a vacancy in your neighborhood, absolutely. Come to a meeting and say, I would like to be the precinct officer, and we'll get you in there generally. You'd have an easier time getting into the other party because they have, of the 43 precincts, they only have about 6 or 8 full. But I wouldn't encourage that.
My first question has to do with election integrity. I don't know if each individual, county can control some of their own election integrity. I would love to see drop boxes totally eliminated. I don't think it's necessary.
I agree.
Is there anything that the Bonneville County Central Committee can do to get the ones here in Bonneville County eliminated? And statewide, as a Republican Party, can we as registered Republican voters do anything to have our voice heard to force them to eliminate the drop boxes. And I don't know where else, what else you're doing to improve election integrity, but I think we have a big issue here in Idaho, as in all states. And it worries me with this next election coming up that, if we don't do something to better secure the election integrity.
Absolutely. And that is, I know, a topic that is everywhere inside the party right now. That we are lobbying our government officials on all levels to improve election integrity. I can tell you one of the things that we can do, because we can't control the election integrity in Pennsylvania per se very well. But one of the things we can do in the Republican Party, it goes back to our own local neighborhood precincts. If you are a precinct officer or assistant precinct officer or anybody in your neighborhood, after the election's over, you can go to the county election office and you can ask them for a list of the people who voted in your precinct. And, we hear all about these big ballot dumps. They dump 10,000 ballots here or something there, and these stories about that. You can go verify that yourself, at least for your own precinct, because they will give you a list. They won't tell you how they voted, but they'll tell you who you voted. And you'll be able to go over that list and say, yeah, that's my neighbor, that's my neighbor, that's my neighbor. I recognize this address, XYZ. And if there's 10,000 that voted in your precinct, you might say there's something a little funny there. There should be 300 or 400 probably, and they should be your neighbors. And that's something that we as individuals can do, and really should be happening in every precinct, in every county, in every state in the nation. That's, to me, the best way to have election integrity starts at the local level, because we can and should verify the integrity of our own neighborhood.
And if we discover something like that, then who do we contact? Where do we go?
You could contact the political party for one. You could go straight to the election office and bring that up to our county commissioners. They're ultimately the ones who have the authority over the county election office, and if need be, into the legal world, I suppose, too. But yeah, if there's a problem, it needs to be brought to attention.
Okay, and then I just have one more question concerning the people that end up running for certain offices. I'm not going to name any particular names, but it's kind of a known fact that this person was a Democrat, but they ran as a Republican because that was the only way that they were going to ever get into office, was to run as a Republican, even though they are totally Democrat. How can that happen with the Republican Party? Is there any way of screening some of these candidates so that you do not have
Well, let me tell you, there was a big public lawsuit about that topic. It is something that's being worked on, and that applies to a few things. The proposed rule that is going to be considered in the future, that 25-month cooling off period, that would have had an impact in that race, it sounds like. The other thing that's being considered and talked about is what involvement should the party organization have in informing voters about those seeking the nomination of that party. And there's good arguments on both sides of that question, but I believe that those who make up the party organization have a responsibility to the voters in their own precincts to inform those voters about the candidates that are seeking their nomination.
or addressed in the future?
I sure hope so. Yes, we're working towards it. We're working towards it. Yes.
Nick, in parallel with the electronic voting, why can we not pass either, I'm not sure if it's a law, a regulation, guideline, to say we want to count paper ballots in parallel and do our own audit in our own county or wherever the 43 counties are in the state? Is there a possibility to do that, or is there some overarching, again, law, guideline, regulation that says, no, you cannot count paper ballots?
I think there is a possibility of doing that, yes. And again, I'm not an election expert, but I believe in Bonneville County, at least, all of our ballots, I think, are cast on paper ballots. And so after the fact, if there is a question, there is an opportunity to go back and count, I believe. And the party can do that. In fact, this last election, something new, we sent challengers to many of the precincts where they were counting to be able to be there and watch the balloting and be able to watch the counting and to be able to view that and make sure that we were comfortable with how it was happening. It does. Yeah, there's 43 precincts. You got to have somebody at those precincts, be able to talk to them. I generally believe our elections are fairly secure in our county. I can't speak for other counties and especially other states, but even if we think they're secure, even if we think they're run by great people, accountability breeds quality. And if we're watching and counting and verifying, that keeps us going where we're supposed to. But yes, I think it's doable.
I want to tell you that I watched the poll worker in my district, and because I normally work there, because I was on the ballot, I couldn't work the polls. But they made the poll watcher go sit way over there, and I went over to him. I said, "You go sit over here so that you can see what's going on." And that's the thing that has to be done. And we have to. I mean, he was going to acquiesce to them, but you have to speak up. So we need people there, right there. You mentioned that a precinct is about 200 people. Is that average? Because
I think it's about 600 people total.
Oh, okay.
If everyone votes.
Because I think mine's over 1,000, and I was thinking, what does it take to divide my precinct?
No, they're generally evenly divided, but the turnout varies quite a bit across the county. In a primary election, it's not uncommon to have maybe 300 or 400 vote of that 800 to 1,000 that's in your precinct.
I was just going to say I was able to be one of those precinct challengers, and I saw a couple of things. One is there was well over 100 people that came in and registered that day. And one of the things that the judge was asking them is if they were independent or unaffiliated, they would ask them what one they wanted, and was even showing them the ballot, which I question that, because anybody who looked at the ballots knows that if you were in independent, all you could vote on was the judges, and there was no option there. Everything was automatic. So they basically didn't get a vote. So I know for a fact there was a lot of people that chose Republican because it was more of a full ballot. They had more options. And that's where this 25-month rule with the crossover voting is going to really help, because if there was 300 to 500 people that voted at my precinct, I can guarantee there was over 100 that chose their affiliation that day, maybe closer to 200. And when you start adding up all the precincts, that's a lot of votes that can really affect it. And I'll just say another thing. I also went to the state convention, and that was an amazing experience. I mean, I went, I'm fairly new in this realm, and I went not really, knowing what it was going to be like and not all that excited. And I come back, I was talking to some of the guys at work, and I'm just like, that was one of the funnest weekends of my life. I can't wait to go back in 2 years. It's a very good experience. I encourage everybody to get more involved.
It's amazing to think that sitting 3 days in a hot auditorium could be the funnest weekend of your life. But he's right. It was. And it's amazing to be able to rub shoulders with so many good patriots. I've made friends at state conventions from all across the state, and just wonderful people.
I was just wondering, especially for legislative races, I think that it helps maintain the integrity of the brand of the Republican Party to at least request candidates for legislative office to get copies of the platform and express that they agree with the platform or put down what they disagree with. And then weren't you accused of trying to enforce loyalty oaths with regard to that kind of process, which is a total misrepresentation? But how else are you going to maintain the integrity, help voters know what kind of person they're voting for?
Yeah, there's a lot of hyperbole that gets thrown around. And that's why it's important to go back to the foundational principles. And, I kind of make the pothole repair club in jest, but I think it's important to remember the foundational principles of why an organization actually exists and where it gets its authority and what it's trying to accomplish. And it's important for a political party, even as big as the Republican Party, to remember what it's trying to accomplish, why it exists and how it exists, what nature it actually is.
I lived in Colorado about 25 years, and they have caucuses. And we signed up and we went to listen to Rand Paul. And it was one of the most exciting nights of our lives. It's great. I agree.
If you're like me, at some point in your life, you've said, wow, the Republican Party is just as corrupt as the Democrats, and there's nothing we can do to change it. I used to believe that, and it's not true. We proved that by cleaning house at the state convention. But not only that, I think it's important to clarify here that if you want to get involved and you put in some work and some effort to do it, you can make a vast difference. My older brother, he was a delegate convention from Bingham County with me. We both went down. We traveled down to the convention together. And I didn't even know this until we got to the convention. He had submitted 2 platform proposals to change the Republican Party platform in Idaho. And it was 2 things that were not included in our primary. One was a platform stance on religious freedom, supporting religious freedom. The number 1 right in the Bill of Rights was not in our party platform. And he submitted that proposal, and he submitted a proposal on judicial interpretation. Both those proposals passed unanimously in committee and in the body. And it's now a part of our Republican Party platform, just because he decided he wanted to get involved, try and make a difference, and he did. And every single person in this room has the ability to do that if they want to put in the work and do it. It's fascinating to be part of the Pothole Club and be able to make the rules, you know.
Absolutely. It was, I think I speak for all the delegates from Bonneville County when I say how rewarding it was to be able to make a difference, to actually be able to accomplish things. You know, and like I say, we watch national politics a lot, and it's just frustration. Ain't it awful? But in local politics, if you'll assert yourself and get involved, you can make a difference. I used to brag a few years ago. I made a proposal in the platform committee. They had a whole bunch of grammatical changes that needed to be done, and they were working through them slowly, and we're going to run out of time. And I made a motion to approve them all, and it went through. And I said, I've amended the platform more than anyone else.
So someone had asked earlier about if you're a PCO, do you have to go be a delegate? No, that is open to everyone. It's voted on. So if you come to the reorganization meeting, when that happens every 2 years, you can apply with the county GOP to be a delegate, and then it is voted on. We had, 98 names?
Mm-hmm.
It took us all night, but we gave everybody a chance. We voted on it, and then they're ranked. And however many the state lets us have, which was 41 plus our 6 legislative delegates, that's how many we get. And then we get to have that many alternates. And we had, what did we end up with? 8, I think, alternates that ended up being delegates because of situations where the delegate couldn't come through. And I wish you could all read the letter that James' wife Kelly wrote after the convention. I almost cry thinking about it, because I think it spoke for all of us. It was such an incredible experience. It's been so frustrating the last couple of years with everything that's happened, and you feel like I can't ever do anything to make this change, and it's just going to get worse. And after we went and we saw the support there, and we saw how many good people were there spending hundreds of dollars and their time and being away from their families and new babies, we came together and we made a difference. And it's going to change the trajectory of the party here in Idaho.
Thank you. And she's right. The Republican Party has very strict guidelines for how each county chooses their delegates, and we have to follow those very strictly. And in this case, when we chose our delegates back on May 26th, we had 98 applicants for the 41 positions. According to the rules, we had to give each one of those 98 applicants 2 minutes to speak. So we were there half the night. And I was worn out because I was running the microphone back and forth all night long. But anyone who is a registered Republican is allowed to apply to be a delegate and can give a speech. 4 years ago, we were at our reorganization meeting here in Bonneville County, and we had this guy sitting here, and when it came time to choose delegates, he stood up and he stood up in a thick New York accent. He said, "I just moved here from Brooklyn, I think." And he said, "It's so great to be among friends. I was alone in New York as the only conservative, and I'm among friends." He gave such a rousing speech. Nobody knew him in the room, but we chose him to be a delegate. And he went to the state convention, had a great time. He's been there, been back twice more. He's our current vice chairman in the party organization here in the county. And he's a great advocate for freedom. And he walked in off the street, basically.
So back to the election and Republican, Independent, Democrat, it just has to be tightened up, to even, 24 months period, whether you moved here or not, because there was an employer that sent out his employees with a list of who to vote for and how to go and register at the polling place. And we lost a legislature in Madison County by 36 votes. And I know that over 100 of this man's employees went and voted for the list that was given them to vote for.
Yeah, there is no perfect system.
I know, but if they could not register as Republican at that primary, that would not have happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it happened here in Bonneville County too.
Oh yeah. And I think there's definitely room for improvement. And I also, to wax philosophical, I believe that if our government is functioning correctly, those who are put into elected office are put there to do a limited job. And it shouldn't matter nearly so much who gets into those offices if they're following the Constitution and the limits of the government structure. But your point is well taken. I think we can and should do a much better job of administering our elections, especially the primary elections.
I was just going to mention the letter that Bev Kingsford mentioned of James's wife, Kelly. Watch for it tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow. It's coming out in the Post Register, so watch for it.
Correct. We'll share it on our website too. No, we'll share it on our website too.
Are there any other questions? Nick? Are we good? Any other questions? Oh. Huh?
We have 8 precincts that do not have a PCO. If you want to help, you come talk to me. I'll put you to work.
But you have to live in the precinct. You have to live in the precinct. So
we do need help.
Remember that you can also be an APCO.
Yep.
Right, an alternate precinct committee person. So
absolutely. We're also, as I mentioned, we have some goals that we're doing coming up, and you don't have to be an elected precinct officer to be on one of the committees that helps recruit new people for candidates or helps work towards elections, or the candidate review committee either. So we're open and welcoming. I'm not here to recruit though.
I told him that because we definitely are a nonpartisan organization. We are conservative. Guarantee that. Let's everybody give Nick a hand. I think he did a great job. Thank you. And I think from Nick's perspective and all this about recruiting, we are recruiting for citizens. We believe in God, family, our country, our Constitution. That's what we're all about. And we need to, and from Stand Up for Idaho's perspective, we're recruiting all of the time from that for that perspective. And we do need to find organizations that will support us. I'll say that a lot of our goals are in line with the Republican Party. A lot of our goals are in line with what the Libertarian Party would say and the Constitutional Party. That's why I say, you need to look at those things and see where you are. The concern about aligning yourself with a specific party is that you alienate those other parties. And again, we're citizens. At the beginning of those, we're the person that has this problem with this pothole. Okay? And we need to figure out how to get these potholes fixed. And it's going to take all of us to do that. And so from that perspective, I say that's where we come. And in all fairness, I would encourage everybody to go look at the Bonneville County Democrats webpage. Because, and it's a little hard to find, but you go and it has an about us. And if you look at that about us, it talks a lot of the same things that we say. And so that's where I say you just have to look. Fact is, on that, when you ask me what I'm saying, I had a gentleman that I know is extremely, well, I won't say extremely, that is conservative. He believes in the Constitution and all that. And his comment when I had him read that platform was saying, darn, I'm a Democrat. That point being, though, is I think a lot of people personally, in themselves associate with certain values. And by, part of the issue that we are at right now as citizens and as citizens of the country is we're being divided because of, are you Democrat? Are you Republican? We currently have, in my opinion, a Democrat that is saving our country in a lot of fashions. And it's Manchin. Okay? He is preventing things from occurring. Okay? The Democrats potentially have majority, and so he is preventing some policies from actually occurring that in my own opinion and Doug Toomer's opinion, are not beneficial for our country and us as citizens. And so let's be careful about, let's do our research. Let's look at things. Let's pick the right person. We don't pick by party, we pick by the person. If they align with the Republican Party, great. If they align with the Libertarian, great. And if your values align with the Democrats, fine, great. The thing that I would say is be proud and stand your ground on your beliefs. And if you believe that you are on this side of that line, fine, stand firm. If you believe that you're on this side of the line, stand firm and defend that line, because that's the integrity. And if you truly believe that, it's the problem that I have is when, well, I'm just going to slip on over here because to me that's fraud. That's falsehood. That is fraud in man's eyes, I believe, and in God's eyes. And so with that, know who you are, vote for the person, vote for it with your heart, and do what you can. And again, I think Nick did a great job. I'll never look at a pothole again the same way. So we need a lot of pothole committees. So thank you very, very much. You guys have and I do want to encourage people to come next week and listen to this lady, because human trafficking, you're going to be surprised. And this is happening in Idaho Falls. So hope to see you next week. Thank you very much. Have a good night and be safe.